Hello, everyone. So I am excited that we're going to get to go over today's best practices for banking and how we can use those bank feeds in Enterprise. Hopefully, along the way, we'll also discover some reasons why for you that it's a good practice to go ahead and keep up with our banking and credit card transactions in the system, because it definitely makes it easier if we have our bank connected to keep those more up to date if that bank feed is there. So my name is Lori Walsh. I am a partner here at Fourlane. So before I get started on today's topic, while we still wait for everybody to come in, I do want to remind everyone we do have a YouTube channel. So if you have missed any of our webinars in the past, or if you just need a refresher and go back to see some of them, you can. You can find them on our channel. It is at youtube.com/Fourlane. You can also subscribe, so that'll help keep those notifications coming for anything new. We do have videos recorded and put out there on a very regular basis. So that way you can keep in the know on anything that we're sharing. You can connect with us also through Facebook. Our group name is Fourlane QuickBooks Enterprise, and there's always a ton of great information out there. It also gives you the ability to ask questions and have those answered. So it's a good group to kind of run questions by, your peers. One more thing I go over is the Fourlane demand support. What we do here is it's $25 per user. Per user per month, up to 5. If you have more than 5, that price will drop to $20 per month for 6 users or more. And how it works, once you get signed up, whenever you need help on some of these items that are listed here, such as product registration, diagnosing corruption, or maybe even a rebuild fail, any of those, all you have to do is you email our help desk, let them know what's going on, and then someone here on the Fourlane team, on that support team, will actually get back with you within an hour, either with a call or a follow-up, right, so that they can diagnose and help. So if this is something that you're interested in, please let us know. Just reach out. You can reach me by my email, which is on the screen, or you can just contact Fourlane directly, and we'll get you that information and how that support plan works. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to go through today why the bank feature is so important, why we want to keep up with those bank transactions more than just waiting till the end of the month, and why we want to make sure that the credit cards are also recorded on the daily if possible. And this will help make sure that we're recording all those expenses in a timely fashion, have a better feel for where our cash position is. In addition, it just helps us, right, with the reconciliation and keeping up with our month-end close, right? We're not having to capture all of those at the end of the month. We can actually do it throughout the month and then do that final reconciliation when that statement comes in, and know that all of those transactions are recorded. Also helps reduce that element of surprise at the end of the month as well. So let's go ahead and jump into a sample file, and we'll walk through setting some things up. So as you can see, my sample file here, it's just one of the many. If you've got Enterprise, hopefully you're practicing in these. So there's a couple of ways to change our banking. So we have the banking tab up here, right? So we can get to the bank feeds here. We can also do it through preferences. Now I'm going to go ahead and start here. So our bank feed center is listed under that banking tab. We can also change our bank feeds mode. If I click on here, it's going to take me to that preference under checking, right? And I can see I have 3 different ways that I can look at this. So you can find the one that fits you the best. You also have to check in with your bank to make sure that they will actually allow the connection to QuickBooks. And if they do, that means those bank feeds will come in, or those transactions, right? Whether it's credit card or bank, those will actually feed in based upon when they do the sync. So some banks, it's more real time. Some it may be at the end of the day, and some may not allow it to actually connect. And that's just a safety feature, right? Making sure that they don't have. So if they're able to ensure that it's a safe transmission, they will allow that connection. And then if not, there is another option, which I'll show you in a minute. So I'm going to start here with the classic mode, right? So when we click on that one and I go up here to banking, down to bank feeds, when I go into that bank feed center, this is what the classic mode looks like, okay? I can switch between my credit card and my bank. If I come in here and let's look at this one, I can actually view, and it's going to take me to that register. It's going to show me those transactions that we need to look at and deal with. So in this case, we have this Mendoza Mechanical, and it's unmatched. Okay, so if we want to match it, we can, or we can add it, right? It'll allow us to do that. So I can either add it to the register, or I can match it. If I know that it should match, right, I can go ahead and match it. The way it matches, this is for all modes. If I have, let's say that it was a check, right? We issue checks through QuickBooks, so I have a check number, I have a check amount, I know who that vendor was that we paid. Then when that bank transaction comes in, you'll be able to see it a little more clearly when I get to one of the other modes. But when it comes in and it can find that original transaction, looking at the check number, the amount, and the vendor, right, it'll actually say match in here. And then at that point, we can match it up. It'll go to our register, and then it's recorded, right? And we know that it came in the right amount for the right date. So that's important. And I actually had a situation. I'm going to go ahead and close this window so I can go back. But I had a situation where we had transactions coming in we didn't issue. And because we were keeping up with it on a daily basis, we were able to contact the bank right away, and it eliminated that opportunity for fraud, because that's exactly what it was. They had taken and gathered our information, and they were actually using that to attempt to steal money. And so it allowed us to catch it really, really quick. Now, if I go back to my banking, and I'm going to go and I'm going to show you what that second one is. So if we look at the express mode, it is going to close all my windows here real quick. So let's go back in here and look at our bank feed center. As you can see, it looks different. I can click between the accounts here, right? Let me go back up to this one. I can go ahead and look at my transaction list, which is going to give me all of my kind of dashboard here. It's going to give me my transactions, and I have the ability here to actually do batch transactions. So it makes that a little bit more efficient. And our goal is, right, to make it easier, right, and make it where it's not quite as, one transaction at a time. It also improves the ability to see. So if, let's say for credit cards, for instance, a lot of our clients won't actually enter those credit card transactions at the time. Now, there is a way we can do that and automate it too, but if they don't, they just have it connected through the bank feed, those transactions are still coming in. So we can actually address those expenses, especially for keeping up with job costing, right? We can actually address those expenses at the time they come in, and then we're not dealing with it when the statement comes in, trying to catch up. Okay, now let me go back to the one I want us to work in. So let me go back here, and let's change this to our advanced mode. Now this is a newer look. It's only been around, I think, a couple of years. But this one, and if you've worked in QuickBooks Online, you're going to see where, oops, let me go to the Bank Feed Center. You're going to get to see some of that familiar look too, because as you can see, I have everything in one screen here. I'm not having to go to different windows. I can click between my savings, my checking. I can click between here and my credit card. It just makes it a lot easier. So in this account right here, you can see, let me go up here and show you the rules. So the rules list, it allows us to create some things to help automate. So for instance, if I have a check that is issued every month, right, and it's done through the bank, I'm not issuing that check from QuickBooks, right? So that check's not already in the system. But let's say I have the rent coming in every month. Well, I can actually set up a bank rule here where I can say, I can give it the description, or I can use an amount, right? Usually description. I can go ahead and put this in there. So let's say I do for rent. Well, here I can put what my payee is, like who it's going to, right? So I can go ahead and say it's going to be this one. I can categorize it here, which means I can go ahead and put it to my GL account. Okay, so if we're going to use this one for rent, let's see where my rent account is. There we go. If I have anything else that I want to assign it to, I can do this. So if it's a scenario where I know it's going to a specific job or project, right? Or if I know, and this is the one we see the most often, right? If it's going to be for a class, I can go ahead and add that. So when I save it, any transaction that comes in, whoops, I forgot my rule name. So any transaction that comes in meeting this criteria, it is going to automatically, or give me the opportunity, right, to accept it, but it'll go ahead and code it for me, right? So it just helps us with that automation, right, which means efficiencies, hopefully. Now, I don't recommend, there is a way that you can have it automatically, and that's going to be in your preferences. Let me see if I can get, nope, I'm not going to be able to do it from the screen, but I'll show you in a minute. There is a way that you can have it say to automatically create a rule. And I rarely recommend that, only because I want a little more control, right? And this will allow me to have more control because it'll go ahead. So let me go ahead and close this out. It will go ahead, as you can see here, and say rule is applied. But as long as I don't give it that automatic, where it's going to go ahead and automatically add it to the register for me, I still have the ability to add it. And again, maybe that's my control issues, but I just like to make sure that I am looking at the transactions and knowing that they're going to the right place. Now, as you can see on the screen, I am in my checking account here. I have some tabs here. So recognize means it was able to either have the rule apply automatically because it matched across based on our rule that we had created. If it doesn't, if it's only able to partially identify, it's going to sit in this tab over here. Now, as you can see, I don't have anything here, but that way it helps us identify those. We may have to research or do a little bit more, right? So we can start here with the recognized. We can go through. Now, each transaction that we're adding to the register, it's going to improve our efficiencies in one, we're keeping up with them daily. So if you look at your balance sheet, once these have all been addressed, right, our balance sheet's going to represent or should represent, and you can see that even in here, right? This is what the bank balance has. This is what we have in QuickBooks. So obviously we have some variances there. Mine's because with this being a sample file, it can't actually connect to the bank. But for us, if these are close, right? So if I have uncleared checks sitting in the QuickBooks side, right, that balance is going to be off by those uncleared checks. But they should be close, right? So this will help us keep up with that, but it also on our balance sheet, right, it'll show us what our cash balance is. But the other impact is that it allows us to have those expenses recorded, right? Because cash kind of drives the business. We're either issuing checks, weekly, we're receiving money, hopefully daily, right? And as long as we're maintaining those in, because it'll even impact us right on the deposits. Because if we're creating our deposits in QuickBooks based on when the customer payments are applied, once that actually shows that it's cleared, it'll match. And so when we go to that transaction, we know that transaction matched what was in the bank. It wasn't off a few pennies, right? Or it wasn't somebody else's trying to get into our account. It'll keep us in line there. So it kind of acts somewhat as an audit function, but it also helps us to make sure that when we're looking at, and when the owners are looking at the balance sheet and they want to make sure that their assets are right, AKA a lot of times it's the cash, right? So they can make those decisions, or even the credit card showing that, hey, we're going to owe this and we need to plan for that payment. Doing this on a daily basis helps. All right, so over here on this one, because it did match, right, or it's showing as a match status rule applied, which means that's the rule that we created, we can go ahead and add it. That'll attach this bank transaction to the transaction in the system, or in this case, it's going to create that transaction in the system, in which case it'll update our balance sheet. And if it's an expense side, right, it'll also update the profit and loss. We have two here. As you can see, these are unrecognized, which means there's nothing in the system that identifies for that, okay? A lot of times we see this on the credit card side, because if we're not creating those credit card transactions through the system like we may be when we create our checks, right? Like if we print checks in the system, those transactions are created in QuickBooks first, and then we, issue those checks out, whether mail or ACH or whatever our method is. So that way, when the bank feed comes in, it can usually find that transaction to match. In this case, because it cannot, right? Then we have the opportunity to come in here. Now, if I want to go in here and I can add more information, I can click on that, and it's going to bring this box up so we can actually put more information. So if I need to split that transaction, then I can. Okay, I'm not limited to just accepting what's sitting on this screen. All right, so let's cancel on there. If I need to add more, I can add more here, and that makes it helpful, right? Again, we do need to recognize that we probably will have to contact the bank and let them know. And that's just a safety feature. We want to make sure, and they want to make sure, right, that no one can access our accounts and do some damage that we're not aware of. Now, from here, if I wanted to go ahead and add both of these, I have another batch action box down here at the bottom. Now, what the ignore does is it allows us, and we see this sometimes, especially on a transfer, it may already be in the system. And if we've already added it to the system and it's different than this one, we may elect that on a transfer, and I see this more often with the transfer between accounts, sometimes even with the payments to a credit card. Sometimes it may be on one side and not the other. So if that's the case, right, or maybe I've removed it from one side and left the other, I may want to ignore them and just add my own transaction. Both of them are acceptable. Again, the biggest advantage here is I can see the transactions daily. I can address them daily. I'm not going to have as many surprises. And if I do have a surprise, such as the instance where somebody was trying to access our account and should not have, then it gives me that right now time frame to deal with it. Now, when we go ahead and add it, and I'm going to go ahead and add, let me go back to my recognize since I know this one matches. So this one's downloaded as an ATM. It's going to hit the tools and miscellaneous account. So if I go ahead and add this one, and because it is old, that's fine. And I'll have to remember that date whenever I go in there. So let's go look here on our financials, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the profit and loss since we know that that one account was on that one, and then we'll circle back on what the checking shows. So I believe it was tools and labor. Oops, I'm going to have to do this for all. All right, so let me see if I can find that account in here. I think it was this one. Yep. So there's our account, and the transaction is sitting in there. So we are good to go there. It's already reported there. And because we're looking at our checking account, let me get out of that. When I go here and I need to go to reports. When I go here and I look at my balance sheet, then those transactions, of course, this is fiscal year to date. I'd have to do all for this one, and I'm not going to click in here because there's going to be a ton of transactions, but it's going to be reflected here in my checking the minute that I hit that add, because that's where it's going to go to my register. So that makes it a lot easier again. Let's see, is this the same instructions for QuickBooks Desktop? If we're talking about the banking side, yes, because I'm actually in 23 Enterprise. I'm just in a sample file. So if that's the actual question that you're asking in the question chat, it is. And if that's not the question that you're asking, if you can just let me know what that is, I'll address that too. Anyway, it does the minute we hit add, or if it's a match and we hit that, it's going to go through. So then the other side that's going to help us, I'm going to go ahead and get out of this, is when we go to our reconciliation. All of these transactions that we're moving through here daily, they're already going to be there, right? And so when we actually go into the reconcile screen for whichever account we're reconciling, I'm just going to go ahead and put a 0 in here. Those transactions are going to sit in here, right? So that ATM withdrawal that we just did, it's sitting right here. So it makes it easier for us to reconcile because we are not doing everything the last day of the month or the first day of the next month, right? Trying to play catch up. So it can also, by keeping up with this, not only does it give us line of sight to what our cash balances are, not only does it give us a line of sight for our projects, right, and where those expenses lie, but it's going to improve our efficiency on the month-end close, because the bank reconciliation, especially if you have a large number of accounts that you have to reconcile, because we have some clients that do have, they have investment accounts and they have bank accounts and credit card accounts. And if you've got a corporate card where you have, a large number of people using them, or even just 5 people, that's a lot of transactions that you have to try to catch up with. So this will help it become a little bit more efficient and a lot easier, hopefully, because then you can just click them off and you go. I have some clients that they actually check their bank, right, with the feeds that come in, and they actually start doing this once they finish moving their transactions from the banking center. They'll actually come in and start the reconciliation. Obviously, they won't have the balance, right? They won't have this ending balance, but they can still go ahead and check everything that's clicking the bank, or that's clearing the bank, right, or that posted to the bank in the credit card side, and they're already ahead, right? They're already planning, and they're getting ahead of it, and again, eliminating those surprises. So then, right, if somebody's coming to you and saying, I need to know what our cash balance is, you can say, oh, it's this, less these, uncleared checks, which you would know because you're also keeping up with that in your bank side. All right, so let's leave this. Now, this little section right here, or this one, as you can see, they're the same little, it's that sync, right? We can go ahead and just do the sync when you go in. That way, if it doesn't automatically update, you've got all your transactions. These boxes down here, this transaction pending review says we have 2, right? So right here, we can see we have 2 unrecognized right now. This may require us to do a little research, but that's why it also separates it out. And then if we go over here, we'll be able to actually see the transaction that we added to our register. Okay, so it makes it real easy. Let me go over here and let's look at this credit card. So now you can see I have 3 credit card accounts set up with this one. Right now I have 1 recognized. It's that auto match that we kind of looked at. If I go in this one, look at that one, it's the same, okay, because they're connected. So I still have my partially recognized. In this case, we don't have any because none of them came through. We didn't have any of the unrecognized. We don't have to do anything there either. And we didn't because we haven't done anything here. It's going to be blank. Just getting familiar with the screen helps. Some of the other things that we can do with this. So I have a lot of clients that they don't actually bring in their credit card transactions one at a time, unless they're using the feature in Enterprise that allows you to, like, you've got it connected so that they can actually take the picture at the time of the transaction and it'll automatically sync in which case we want to match those up to the bank feeds. So that's another big win, because if what they sent you doesn't match what cleared the bank, then we can address it the day that it comes through the bank, right? Because it's not going to match. And if we know it's in there, it just gives us a lot more control, right, on making sure our transactions are accurate. And that's the biggest thing, right? We want to make sure our numbers are right. Then if we have it where we are doing the bank feeds every day and we get one, right, that is like, oh, wait a minute, that's a really large amount and we shouldn't have one that large amount, or, we need to know what was done, right? If everybody's just using them to pull information or to use them for jobs, right, where they're having to buy those extras that didn't get received maybe, or was unforeseen at that time, right? We know what those amounts are, and if we get one that's really large, that can also indicate some fraud. So there's a lot of advantages to using the bank feeds in the system and making sure that we're keeping up with them regularly. Okay. So let me go back to our bank reconciliation, because for those, hopefully everyone knows, but you can actually reconcile almost all of the balance sheet accounts, which means we can also reconcile those credit card accounts in here too. Let me see where my credit card is. QVC home. There we go. So I can reconcile at this level or I can reconcile at this level. I'm going to go ahead and do it from the high level, see if we have any transactions sitting in here. So we do. So we'll be able to come in here, reconcile those. And again, if we're keeping up with them daily and we're verifying them with the bank, right, to make sure not only are all the transactions coming in through the bank feed, right, because that double check is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. If we're double checking to make sure everything's coming in, we can check those off. And then that way, when that bank statement comes in the middle of the month usually, or before the end of the month, some people will have them at the beginning of the month, but most of the time what I've seen is they come in periodically through the month. You can go ahead and be ready, and that way you can go ahead and be ahead of the game and recognize you have all of your transactions identified and accounted for, which is a big thing. And then again, once they hit, so once I go ahead and confirm this one, or if I say it's not a match, right, I can change it. So this is the other, oh, I was going to show you that. Let me go back over here real quick. So on our preferences, let me show you that rule I was talking about. So if I go to checking and company preferences and we pick our bank feed mode, if I'm doing this where it creates the rules automatically, I want to make sure I'm doing this always ask before creating a rule. That way, if it's an exception, right, because we can always have an exception. If it is an exception, then we can actually catch it before it goes ahead and moves into the register, right? Because if it's an automatic bank and we say, go ahead and just create it, of course, this is just the rule. This isn't going to put it to the register until we tell it to. But if we have this to create the rules automatically, we can have a very long list and they may not be accurate. So we want to kind of limit having, a lot of things that we don't need, right? We want to make sure that we're controlling it. But the creating the rules automatically means that they will actually show up on this rule list. And you can also, right, you can add one here like we did a little bit ago, but you can always come in here and delete it. So if one does accidentally get added, you can come back and correct it. Or maybe let's say it's not good anymore, right? And we can come back and remove it at that point too. I do appreciate, I know it's we have just a couple of minutes. I do want to say thank you to everybody that came today. I hope this was beneficial. If you have any questions that come up later, please feel free to reach out. Again, you can either reach out through our Facebook page or you can reach out to me directly, lwalsh@fourlane.com. And we'll be happy to, get those questions answered for you. Or if this has triggered something again, or if you want to, watch it again, it'll be on our YouTube page. You'll be able to access it from there. And I do appreciate everybody coming today. Bye-bye.